So I do want to start to talk about, because you have the AlcHempist out and you have these Keep Calm Carry On gummies that you're doing, and some Clovis people have already bought these gummies.
Oh,
and
thank you.
yeah, and I just want to dig into like, let's talk like, well, one, I know you're meticulous about sourcing, so we can get into that if you want to, like the way that you choose where your CBD comes from and all this. And then I'd also like to dig into how you choose when you're making a product. Like, what makes you choose this product going to have 25 milligrams of CBD? Is it for this specific thing? So that's a lot of the questions we got, and we'll dig into Q&A here too, but it's just kind of like, what are the uses for these things, and how do you choose dosages and all that? It's just, I think it's people are so used to walking into the doctor, and the doctor hands them a pill, and they don't have to think. Like, they don't know this is 500 milligrams or 5 milligrams or whatever. So now they're in the e-commerce space going out trying to choose a CBD product, and they're like, wait, this has 25 milligrams, this has 100. What do we do? You know what I mean?
Is better. Absolutely. That's a good question. First off, I'd say that, pharmaceutical doses of CBD and the approved drugs are, usually 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day or so much more. And CBD and hemp is a non-toxic plant, so you can't take too much of it and then have like a toxicity buildup in your body. So if you took 10,000 milligrams of CBD, there's like a point of vanishing returns to where you're not going to see much more benefit of like maybe what it's doing health-wise in your body. And it might make you a little bit more drowsy or tired, but overall it's non-toxic to the body. So I think it's important to remember is that, don't worry about if you took too much. And I encourage people usually to take a little bit more, because most of the therapeutic, like I said, doses are, 500 to 1,000. And I'd say a standard product, including mine on the market, are 25 milligrams a dose. Just because of the cost effectiveness and different things as well.
Yeah.
So you can't take too much. And that's the first important point. Now, as far as how I arrived at my dosage, a lot of people that I see are usually 10 to 15 milligrams a dose. I typically shoot for 20 to 30 milligrams, sometimes more. And the products, because I've actually helped design and formulate some of their products from other companies. And that's the range that I shoot in, because, because the public's not as educated on it, then if you go at 100 milligrams per dose, your product's a lot higher cost than everybody. And then people are like, oh, that's too much and I can't afford it. So I always tell people, if you can get away with the smaller dose, and I find that 20 to 30 milligrams is the magical dose to kind of start with, then great. You don't have to take any more. But a lot of people I see are usually in that 50 to 100 milligrams range.
Per day?
Per day.
Yeah.
Which I think, like Ben Greenfield, I heard his podcast once, and I think he's like around 75 to 100 milligrams is what I heard him say a day. And that's typically where I'm at too. I'm usually around, 75 to 100. If I'm hitting the gym hard or doing something like that, I might usually go up to 150, 200. And it seems to work really, really good at those doses for me.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I think that there's a lot of the confusion there too, is like there's so many different ways to get CBD. So that's another thing I want to talk about with these gummies. Because a lot of the people in Clovis are familiar with like Ojai, who's doing like those are called tinctures, right? Like tincture style. And it's like a liquid, or like it's kind of treated like a sublingual under the mouth. And then you have these gummies. And then now there's people just putting CBD into other things. Like there's like CBD dog treats and stuff. You know what I mean? So I guess is there a preferred mechanism of absorption? Like, are the tinctures, is it more bioavailable, or like what's the difference there?
Sure. Good question. CBD in general is fat soluble. Okay. Which means it doesn't mix with water. And so typically fat soluble has a little bit less absorption rate than water soluble. People out there that are selling water soluble, and I used to do a lot with water soluble products, want to say it's a lot more strong. I feel like it's more like a couple times, 2 or 3 times maybe as strong, but not much more than that. The thing with like, I would say water soluble products, is that you typically, to get those done, because it's not a natural form, most of the time, most companies have to use preservatives or things like that to stabilize it, right?
And that you're putting it in like faster. A carrier? Is that the deal?
Carrier, yeah. It's usually water. There's a surfactant, which there's natural ones, sunflower lectin, and actually Ojai is one of the companies that does do all organic and natural ones. So it is a better one than I would say most of the companies out there, no doubt.
Sure.
But I feel like for the price point, as well as like what is easy and user friendly for people, that's kind of why I started with the gummies, is because people love gummies. I think we were just talking about the other day, like a lot of new vitamins and stuff are coming out inside of these gummies. And I do believe that the sugar, which there's less than 1 gram per gummy, so it's not much, but that little bit does help with the absorption of CBD and hemp inside the body.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to notice it more too, just when taking it that way versus the tincture. It seems like it hits a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And a little bit more efficacious than using like an MCT oil base or an oil base with it. But overall, like I think, you know, like you said, we were talking about AlcHempist. They make good products. I think one thing that I would say is like I want to make mine more user friendly, and also more cost effective.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more expensive because there's more processing involved in that as well.
Absolutely.
And I tend to keep my hemp extract a little bit more raw, which I'm not quite sure what oil does at AlcHempist, but I do feel like keeping it more raw and less processed, the actual hemp extract contains more of the terpenes and some of the other cannabinoids and things, where most of the water solubles I see, because they're mixing with water, usually do a little bit more refining and processing before they go through the water soluble process. And that's because, I don't know if you've seen CBD oil before, like right when it's extracted, it's a thick black oil.
Wow.
And so it's really, 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 really sticky. And what they do is they distill it, typically to kind of make it more of a golden and remove some of the other plant material. And then they take that distillate, and that's what some people make water soluble out of. The thing is a lot of that tar and black is like really important, beneficial plant material, I feel like. And so it's something I try to keep and preserve as much of the plant as possible. Because I mean, growing it regenerative agriculture and organic and things like that, it's rich and full. And I want to take as least amount away from the plant as possible.
Okay.
And how I tell people to look at it too is like when you're growing hemp or cannabis and you have the flower, right? It has everything in the genetic makeup, the terpenes, the cannabinoids. It has everything that plant was supposed to grow. And as things are being made in products and are extracted and things, it slowly takes away from that full plant. It makes them more concentrated. And extraction does amazing things like activates molecules and things like that. Just like you extract tea or herbs with tea, with hot water. It's a similar thing. But overall, like I feel like you're taking away from the plant. And so one of my main things is like, how can I keep this plant as original as possible, like with all the goodness in there, but still concentrate it, which is one of the benefits of being an extract. And using extracts.
That's a great example too, because I talk about this a lot with, I have these t-shirts that say "Eat whole foods, change the world." Because people get so caught up in like, you know, my daily superfood powder is collagen protein. I'm like, listen, like if you need to get 150 grams of protein a day, don't get 150 grams of collagen. Like you're gonna be in big trouble. You're gonna miss a ton of essential amino acids that you need. Or it's like if you're gonna get all your protein from like pea protein, like you're in real big trouble. Or the same way if people are like, well, I don't really like vegetables, so I just like go to Jamba Juice and I get a bunch of juice. And I'm like, well, no, like you're stripping the fiber, you're stripping micronutrients, and you're now drinking pure sugar. You know, so it's kind of the same thing. It sounds like keeping that whole food form
as much as possible.
Yeah, that's really
I'm a big believer in it.
Yeah, the other thing too is like people get so caught up, man. It was like one of the first things that happened when I mentioned AlcHempist is people were just like, AlcHempist versus AlcHempist, right? Because it's like, because Will came on the podcast and everything. I love Will. He's amazing.
Will's awesome.
You're friends with Will. Like you've talked to him about this stuff extensively. You're both like super CBD nerds. It's amazing. And I'm like, it's not really either or. It's like, do you want to take a gummy? Do you want to take a tincture? Like, what do you want to do? I took AlcHempist for quite a while, and I explained this on the podcast. I don't take anything always. I just don't operate that way. I cycle on and off everything.
I'm the same way, even on CBD.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it's just a matter of personal preference. So, for instance, I still, up until COVID hit, was doing a lot of travel gigs, and then I was doing a lot of traveling. Like 2019, when we met, I went to 8 countries that year. And what I found that was a bummer, and this is not shitting on the product at all, is like I lost a lot of AlcHempist because I would travel with it, and the tincture just wouldn't hold. And I'd like open my bathroom bag and there was just CBD oil all over my bag. I'm like, oh, really? And like I would just like tighten it. I was like putting it in Ziploc bags. I'm like, please don't leak. Yeah. And I think it was just from flying on planes and air pressure changes and all these things. So it's not really like one or the other. It's what do you prefer? Which one do you want?
It really is. I completely agree with that. And that's a good way to say it, because I think Will has amazing products. He, from knowing him and talking to him, he deeply cares about how the plant's grown, just like I do. We're looking at sourcing it the best way, but I think we just tend to find different ways that people can use these products. And whatever feels comfortable and user friendly for them.
Yeah, and it's like you said, price point too, because I think it's we have this Magic Mountain House now with like a bunch of physical products brands in there, and I did multiple product launches as soon as I got here. You launched the gummies. Steven's always doing interesting stuff, and like for anybody listening, is like, it's not cheap to do this stuff, man. And like people just think like, oh, we're getting ripped off. These products are so expensive. And you're like, okay, when you're only sourcing USDA organic, when you're only getting from regenerative farms, when you're trying to keep like the least minimum amount of processing and making it in a very certain way, selling it at a certain price point, and then you have guys like us that we have to compete with Amazon free 2-day shipping.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we have 3PL charges and the warehouse is charging us money. So just anybody listening to this, it's like, I promise you, guys like Matt and I and Will and Steven and all these guys that are doing physical products right, we really do care that this is affordable for you.
Yeah.
And we're really trying our very
hardest.
best.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the biggest thing is it's hard to make, like you said, a really good product that's done well with the best ingredients, trying not to use preservatives, dyes, or anything that's cheap or genetically modified. It's difficult to make it at a good price point. And so, yeah, I've spent a lot of time figuring out ways to do that.
Yeah.
You know, better and better. And it is getting better. I feel like the organic market's getting bigger. People are more aware of this. They're able to pay a little bit more, and they see the value in it. And as they're doing that, I feel like it decreases the cost by
like
law
the
of economics.
It
starts to really like pay off. Like once you start getting more in, you can start buying more, and buying power increases.
Yeah.
And we can get these products down more and more as people support us.